Everybody, welcome back to your favorite PTE study channel. Welcome to Dream English. This is Alex, and today I'm here to discuss the massive new changes with PTE that were announced a few days ago. So first things first, we told you so. So anybody who's in our class or anybody who watched any of our videos, we've been telling people for a few months now that the changes are coming. We advise people to give the exam sooner rather than later, because if the new changes are implemented, it's kind of unpredictable what will be the difference. So for our existing students and for those just watching this video who are planning to take the exam on their own, for example, let's discuss all of these changes so there's no panic, so you're aware exactly of what's happening and how this is going to affect you. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it the same? Do you need to panic? Do you need to prepare any different? And in general, what are the things you have to be aware of? So we'll go through them all quickly and I'll give you my personal opinion. Now, before we get started, I want to be very upfront that I don't really care about PTE. I don't care about IELTS. I don't care about TOEFL. I don't care about OET. So we are exam agnostic, meaning even though it's a big part of what we do, if tomorrow another exam becomes easier or we find better techniques and better strategies to help people get a higher score, we will switch to it tomorrow, no questions asked. So for now, we focus on the one which is the easiest for people in order to achieve the maximum score. So after this, is PTE still the easiest one? Well, stay tuned and watch in order to find out. So let me share my screen with you very quickly, and we'll explain a few things one by one so you know exactly what you need to do. So first things first, what is the main change? What are the main points that they decided to alter? The exam is going to be shorter. Woo! So instead of doing it for 2.5 hours to 3 hours, now you can finish everything in 2 hours. And I got something funny I want to share at the end about this. Second thing, there are fewer questions. Again, that seems like a positive. I don't have to study for as much stuff, right? Let's see. So instead of having 70 to 82 questions, now you will have between 52 to 64 questions. Third thing is no more 10-minute break. So we'll discuss the implications of this shortly as well. And the last thing is there will be a change in the score report. So let's go through these points one by one and discuss what this means for you. So first of all, the exam is going to be shorter. Okay, and how does that affect you? So the first time I heard about this, I thought, oh, that's great. We can finish the exam sooner. Now, this is a little bit misleading. So what I mean is that, yes, the exam is shorter, but it doesn't mean that you have to prepare less. So the main reason being the question types are still the same. You still have a lot of these different types of questions, and you still need to know the techniques for each and every one of them, but they just reduce the number of those questions. So first of all, the introduction will be the same. This is where you have to discuss your reason for taking the exam, you test your microphone and all the other stuff before you start the exam. Now the speaking and writing section, usually they combine the timing together. So what you need to know, both of them became shorter. There are fewer questions in speaking and there will also be fewer questions in writing. So I will discuss that in the next slide as well. Reading section is the one that saw the least amount of change. In terms of the timing, the major questions, the hard questions, unfortunately, are still there, but some of the easier questions were reduced in their quantity. So because of that, it became shorter. This is the major difference in terms of the timing. Your 10-minute break is unfortunately gone. There's no more 10-minute break. I know many of our students use this time to go to the bathroom, do one of these, splash themselves with some cold water in order to stay focused, and then finish their listening section. Now you will not have that benefit. So of course, you need to plan a little bit better before the exam. If you're somebody that drinks a lot of tea or a lot of coffee, well, you don't want to be running to the bathroom too often, so you need to plan this accordingly. And of course, the listening section has been reduced as well in terms of the time. So instead of doing it for 45 to 57 minutes, now it's going to be between 30 to 43 minutes. So quite a big drop in terms of the timing there. So is this good? Is this bad? Or is it the same old? If you're somebody who just feels like you're well prepared and you studied, you know what you're doing. So for me personally, I wouldn't actually mind to give a shorter exam because I'm well familiar with the different types of questions. I know all the different strategies, different formats, so I can go to the exam, get it over with in 2 hours and get out. Now, if you're somebody who's a new test taker, or if you're somebody who's not really aware with how the exam works, what questions are important, where you need to focus in terms of your preparation or marking, I find it can be very confusing because now you're switching to almost a new question type every single time. And you have to keep in mind, oh, this is describe image, then it's retell lecture, then it's answer short questions, then is this, then is that, da, 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 da. So what happens now? People who are not as experienced, people who never gave the exam or only gave the exam one time, I would emphasize even more so that you need to prepare in advance, you need to do mock tests, you need to get familiarized with the order of the questions. Because, for example, when our students give their first mock test, usually it's a disaster. But then the second, third, fourth, fifth, they get better and better and better, and then they're ready for the exam. But the first one is always bad, especially because people get confused switching from one question to the next. They need to remember what is the format for this question, what is the strategy for this question, what is the word limit. So if you're giving the exam for the first time, now you're bombarded with pretty much every second or third question is a different question type. So you kind of like, you used to be able to get into the rhythm, used to get into a flow kind of a state. So you know exactly what question comes next. You do 5, 6 tasks of that type, and then you change pages and you go to a new question. But now, especially in sections like your listening, timing has been reduced, but the questions are still the same. So pretty much every single time you click next, there is a possibility that it's going to be a completely new question type. So again, you just need to be aware with the tasks and the strategies, the word limits, the formats in advance, and you need to know it like the back of your hand. This is the major difference here. So is it good? Is it bad? Is it the same old? I would say it's the same old. It just takes a little bit more awareness from newer test takers when they're giving the exam. Next, and this is the big one. This is the one that I'm very passionate about and very opinionated about. So there are fewer questions in the exam. Okay, and we got the source here for this beautiful table. It's not ours, but you can see the source. So thank you to whoever made this informative graph. But basically, let's have a look at what happened here. If you can see, the first section is going to be your speaking section. So we'll cut it off up to here. Okay, let me just cut it off quickly up to here. There we go. Okay, so these are your speaking tasks. Your read aloud is still the same. You will get 6 to 7 read alouds. Your repeat sentences, unfortunately, didn't disappear. I know how much all of you love repeat sentences, but they are still there, and there's still a lot of them. Now, describe image has been reduced. So they cut it almost in half. From 6 to 7, it's been reduced to just 3 or 4 questions. Same with retell lecture. You're only going to have 1 or 2 instead of 3 to 4. And same with answer short questions. So again, anybody who's not familiar with PTE, anybody who doesn't know how it works, that seems like great news. There's less stuff I have to prepare for. But being on the inside, knowing the marking, knowing the weight distribution, actually this is going to affect people's scores a lot. So why is this? Again, anybody who's attended any of our classes or you saw any of our testimonies, you will see that most of our students get 90 in speaking. Now, why is that? Partially because of the techniques, partially because of the formats. So what they did, the questions that used to be the easiest, describe image, retell lecture, and answer short questions. And yes, those are the easiest. If you attended our classes, you know this like the back of your hand. It's usually very straightforward, very simple. So what they did, the easy questions were reduced in quantity, and the most difficult questions, which is read aloud and especially repeat sentences, so those are 2 of the questions that gave you the most marks in the exam in the past. What that means now, they are worth even more. So again, I repeat, your read aloud and your repeat sentences that were already very, very important are now worth even more. So if you're somebody who's naturally good at speaking, you can read properly, you have good short-term memory, this will make your score higher because more weight is given to the questions you're good at. But people that struggle in read aloud, struggle with stammering, struggle with pronunciation, struggle with short-term memory, this will be twice as hard according to this new marking. So what this means for you, okay? It's actually good if you are somebody who used to struggle in speaking. Okay, so it's good if you used to struggle with speaking. The reason why most people that struggle with speaking, they struggle with the consistency, with maintaining a strong voice, with maintaining a consistent pace. And because describe, image, and retell lecture, in those questions, you have to talk for up to 40 seconds. For many people, it was very difficult to maintain the consistency and the strong voice and the fluency for such a long time. So if you used to struggle in speaking, this is actually a plus for you because now you can focus more on repeat sentences in which you don't have to talk for a long time. You just need to have pretty good short-term memory and you have to use some strategies that we teach in the class. And your read aloud, which again is usually shorter, 15, 20, 25 seconds, so it's easier to maintain a consistent and strong voice and good speed. But if you're somebody that struggles with your pronunciation or you struggle with read aloud, it's that much more important to get the feedback from your trainers or from a human being, because a lot of these websites that I'm sure you guys are using as well in your practice, you see they're not 100% reliable. And including the Pearson mock test, I know some of you messaged us that you've got the perfect mic, but you're getting 10 in pronunciation and you're throwing away your money giving that mock test. So with many of these websites, some are, made for native English speakers, some are made for Mandarin speakers, and accordingly, when they give you the scoring for your speaking, 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5, it's not very accurate. And even for myself, if I do it on some of those websites that are designed for Mandarin speakers, for example, I'm getting 3 out of 5 for my described image. Whereas in the exam, I've got 90 out of 90 multiple times. So some of these things don't make sense. So what that means for you, you need to get the feedback from a person or somebody who's used to analyzing speech. They know the pace, the speed, the clarity. They can adjust. They can help you fix your tone, fix your pitch, fix your pronunciation. And what this means, especially for repeat sentences. So I mentioned this many times. Repeat sentence is the question that gives you the most marks in total in the whole exam, because you get 10 to 12 of them. So they affect your speaking and your listening a lot. Now, because the other questions are cut in half, that means it's going to have an even bigger impact. So you need to know the techniques of what to do if you can't remember the whole sentence, what to do if you miss some words, what to do if the accent is difficult, and all of these things, again, we have the techniques for them. But if you're just practicing on your own, you need to put extra emphasis on those two tasks. Let's move on to the next point. This is going to be a little bit worse when it comes to your reading. So if you struggle in reading in the past, it's going to be a little bit harder nowadays. Why is that? So if you look at the questions which affect reading, okay? Again, number one, we have your read aloud. Number two, we have your summarized written text. Number three, we have your whole reading section, which is going to be over here. And then we have your highlight incorrect words down here. Highlight incorrect words. And we also have your highlight correct summaries. So those are all of the questions that give you marks in reading. Now, those questions are not removed. They are still there. But here's the thing. So the questions that people usually find harder, okay? Let me mark them with a little X. Read aloud is kind of a hit or miss, but most people find it hard. We have reading and writing fill in the blanks. We have reorder paragraphs, and we have reading fill in the blanks. Those are also hard. So do you notice anything here? Anything at all? So what you'll notice, the number of questions of the harder tasks haven't changed. But if we look at the easy marks, and I'm going to stamp them with a little check mark. So we got summarize written text, which is the easiest question if you know the right technique. We got multiple choice, for which we also teach a lot of shortcuts, a lot of tricks, both single answer and multiple answer. And we got highlight correct summary that most of our students get perfect because of the techniques we teach them. So do you notice that all of the easier tasks were reduced in quantity, whereas all the harder tasks stayed the same? So what this means for you, that the questions where you used to get easy marks in reading, that were like gimmicks, now they are reduced and the harder questions are still there, meaning all the extra weight goes to the harder tasks. So we always emphasize your read aloud, your fill in the blanks, and your reorder paragraphs. But now they became that much more important because you can't get away with just knowing the technique and brushing it off. You actually need to focus on the right materials, grammar, vocabulary, somebody checking your tone, giving you feedback, and so on. So again, this is unfortunately bad news for those that already struggle with the reading section. And last thing, when it comes to your spelling. So a lot of students in the past were saying that, look, my spelling is bad, what do I do? And we always used to tell students, your spelling is not that important. Your spelling only mattered in your dictation, in your listening fill in the blanks, and in your summarized written text. Those were really the only questions where spelling really mattered. For everything else, we provided students with the materials that they could study in advance and they knew the spelling of the difficult words. So, summarized written text, again, has been reduced in the number of questions. Your essays, where spelling also doesn't matter that much, your essays are still there. Your summarized spoken text, where spelling, again, before wasn't that important because we had the materials for it, it has also been reduced in the number of questions. But your listening fill in the blanks and your write from dictation, where spelling is a little bit more unpredictable, they stayed unchanged. So let's summarize. A few of the easier tasks, like summarized written text and summarized spoken text, are reduced in the number, and there the spelling wasn't that important, whereas your write from dictation and your listening fill in the blanks, where spelling matters a lot, and each spelling mistake costs you 1% in listening and 1% in your writing. Now, again, all the extra weight went to those tasks. So what this means, before dictation was important, now is going to be extra important. And listening fill in the blanks, again, we do provide some materials for that, but still a lot of these questions are unpredictable and you don't really know which words you're going to get. There are a lot of different questions. So if your spelling is weaker, and people do tend to make a lot of mistakes in this task, now this became even more challenging. So unless your spelling is great, you need to be extra ready, extra prepared. Otherwise, you may struggle in your listening and in your writing section. So let's move on to the next point, which is the break. You can see the sad face. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan of this particular change. I thought the break was great. I always recommended students to take the break, refresh themselves, and just kind of focus, because the listening section was the last section. This is where you have to manage your time. This is where you have to have your awareness and get ready for write from dictation. Now, because there's no break, you're going from the reading section that literally drains your brain because it's very intensive, it's very logical, you need to use your brain a lot. Now you're going to listening without a break. Keep in mind, the number of questions in listening were reduced. So now every time you click next, almost every time it's a completely different question. So you have to pay even more attention to which question it is and what's the technique. You have to pay even more attention to the timing, because you can't get into that flow where you're doing the same question and then you switch. And finally, you're actually mentally exhausted because you're giving the exam nonstop for 2 hours. So personally, I'm not a fan of this rule. I'm not a fan of this change. But again, if you're somebody who's got a lot of energy, or you know how to mentally focus, not get distracted, you're familiar with the exam pattern, it should be the same for you. I'm personally not a fan, but what does that matter? Next, the score report will be different. So is it good, bad, or the same? For you guys watching this video, probably will not make that much of a difference. So the main change is this. What they told us is that the main 4 sections, listening, reading, speaking, writing, they will still be there. Your overall score will still be there, but your enabling skills have been removed. And Pearson didn't announce the full details yet, but they basically said that in your personal Pearson account, they will give you some kind of a feedback for you to know what to focus on. Again, I'm not sure what exactly that feedback is going to look like. I'm not sure how precise it's going to be. I can tell you for a fact, they will not tell you to fix your dictations and fix your fill in the blanks and fix your repeat sentences. That's something that's guaranteed. It's probably going to be something vague like, well, you should focus on your listening comprehension. Well, you should focus more on your reading comprehension. But again, to you guys sitting at home, this means absolutely nothing. So when students used to come to us with their previous score report, we would tell them right away, okay, your essay is not good. We need to fix your pitch or your pronunciation. We need to fix your summarized spoken text and summarized written text because your grammar is quite low. Now, without these enabling skills, our job as trainers, as teachers, will become a little bit tougher. To you, honestly, it won't matter that much, but what's important? Whenever our students finish the exam, I always tell them, you don't call your mom, don't call your dad, don't call your husband, don't call your wife, you call us first. As trainers, we want to know how you performed, if you were well prepared, if there were any unexpected questions, if there's anything surprising or shocking or difficult, so we can adjust and we can improve it for the next group of students, and we can adjust our techniques if we have to. Now, I would emphasize and encourage you, especially our students going for the exam, please, 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 if you'll be giving the exam after mid of November, when these changes take place, please note down and write down any mistakes you can recall while it's still fresh in your memory. Because once you leave the exam room, after a couple hours, you may not remember which sections you struggled in. But if you can recall which parts you found more difficult, it's going to be easier for us to give you the feedback accordingly and to help you fix those areas. Because again, we don't know what this updated feedback is going to look like. So just try to remember to note down after your exam, what are the things you had a challenge with. Now, let's get to the funny part, in my opinion. Funny part is this. On the Pearson website, this is what they tell you. There are no changes to the way in which PT Academic is scored. This is true. Or the accuracy of our scoring. This is also true. And the test won't be any easier or more difficult. Now, this is not necessarily true. And this is the point that makes me absolutely pissed off. So again, if you followed any of our videos, you guys know I'm very vocal when it comes to things that don't make sense. When I see a video with some technique somebody's teaching that doesn't make sense, I tell you. When I see that PTE changes something that doesn't make sense, I tell you. So let me give you an example. About a year ago, they changed the marking, the weight distribution in write from dictation. I mentioned this many times, but if you used to miss one dictation before, you could still pass your listening writing. If you completely miss one dictation right now, unfortunately, you are gone. Your listening writing is going to be gone. So what these guys know very well, they know which questions are the most difficult for people. Read aloud, repeat sentences, then we have the fill in the blanks, then we have the reorder paragraphs, and then we have the write from dictation. So because they removed the easier questions, they reduced them. Now, all of these questions that were already harder for people became that much more important. What that means for you, you have less room to make mistakes in those tasks. So is it specifically harder? Well, not necessarily, but because there are no more easy questions, let's put it that way, and there are more of the hard questions that they know people already struggle with. That means you have less room to make mistakes, you have to prepare more for those tasks, and it's more unpredictable. So I believe this point is absolutely not true. The exam will be a little bit more difficult, especially if your English level is not amazing. It's just average. So back to what I said earlier, we've always told students to emphasize and to focus on a few different tasks, and we spend a lot of time on those tasks. Now we're going to spend even more time on those tasks because, of course, we have to adjust accordingly. And the last thing, before I kind of wrap everything up, I also thought this was quite funny. So PTE tries to justify this new change as something great. Now, you don't have to take the exam for 3 hours, it's only 2 hours. So now all you have to think about is how you'll spend your extra time. Is it coffee or is it by watching Netflix? Well, if I could swear in these videos, I would, but I try to keep myself restricted, okay? So let me get this straight. The exam used to cost 200 some dollars and 300 with tax. Then they increased it to 310, now it's 340, and after tax it's almost 370 AUD. So the price has been increasing, okay? This is part number one. The timing of the exam has been decreasing. Pearson has made a lot of new test centers, and I'm sure some of you guys know, you go to some of these test centers, it's like a cattle farm. It's a big room with 30, 40 computers. They push everybody in, out, go, next batch. In, out, go, next batch. So basically, they started charging you more for the exam, okay? They reduced the time of the exam so they can get more people. The price is still higher. The price hasn't been reduced. And now you can go enjoy your coffee and your Netflix. And it's actually quite funny. I'm going to try to open something very quickly here if I can find it on my computer. I was going through the PTE updates and stuff like that they posted on Facebook. And I saw a hilarious comment. So let me share that with you right now. So somebody called Jenny Fang, shout out to Jenny Fang, said, what about reducing your test fee? If the test time is reduced by a third, can we trust the score of the time reduced version? It's not fair. In other words, you're reducing the time of the exam, but you're still charging the same. How is that fair? And PT Academic replied, the price will be the same and blah, 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 blah. So in other words, they can get more students, they can get more money, and your fee is still the same, and the exam is actually a little bit more difficult in my humble opinion. But what do I know? So last point is this. Those of you that have been taking classes with us, I know I got a lot of your WhatsApp messages, so let me discuss this. Is this good for you? Is this bad for you? Well, the thing is, you still have about 2 months time before these changes actually take place. So I would strongly advise that anybody who's done the classes with us, give your exam before the changes, because you've already practiced, you know the techniques, and all of the easier questions are still there. So you can get a lot of extra marks from your describe image, from your retell lecture, answer short questions, summarize written text, multiple choice, summarize spoken text, and so on. Those are actually easy tasks if you've taken the classes with us. Take advantage of it, give the exam, it will not affect you that much. Now, anybody joining classes in the future, anybody who's going to give the exam in the future, we have already started changing some of our techniques, some of our methods for when those changes take place. Meaning, we change some of the formats and we put extra emphasis and extra time that we will dedicate to the important tasks. So again, for those of you giving the exam in the future, don't worry, we will adjust accordingly. But one thing I want to emphasize, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see a lot of announcements coming from our side. There's a lot of new things we've updated, including our brand new platform, which is going to be public soon. So the way we designed it is that it's like having your own personal teacher teaching you PTE, meaning the software, the platform will guide you in the right direction of what are the most important tasks, how much you should practice them, and how much emphasis you should give to the different questions. So from our side, we will adjust. If you're giving the exam in the future, I would still recommend PTE rather than IELTS. It will still be easier, but you will have to rely more on mock tests, on materials, and getting human feedback. Because again, some of those websites are not 100% accurate, and when it comes to read aloud, repeat sentence, you need to get the feedback from a person. You need to get the right technique, the right strategy, so you know what to do, even if you miss some of the words or even if the sentences are long. So again, my students, go ahead with the exam. Nothing has changed from your point of view. Anybody joining in the future, don't worry, we will adjust accordingly, so you'll have the most up-to-date things. So overall, guys, I'll be honest with you, I'm not that happy with this change. If they decided to reduce or remove reorder paragraphs, reduce or remove repeat sentences that most people find difficult, I would be there clapping. I'd be the first in line to congratulate them. But unfortunately, this is not what they do. Like any big corporation, I'm more libertarian. I'm more, kind of open and transparent. So I see what they're doing. They're going to get more people. They're going to get higher fees from students. They're going to reduce the exam time. They can get more students. And the questions, which were already hard, now became even more important and even more difficult. So this is it. Hopefully that gives you some overview of how this is going to work. Any questions, feel free to comment. We will answer them one by one. If you're looking for extra resources or practice materials or classes, check the links that are pinned in the comments with any of our courses, materials, mock tests, and so on. So this is Alex. Stay tuned. In the next couple weeks, we got a lot of videos and a lot of updates coming. I look forward to welcome you guys again on this channel. All the best, and we will see you soon. Take care.